Hi, welcome to another lawn fawn video. I'm Kara, and today a little field mouse is sharing his thoughts with us and missing his friend. So we're going to use Happy Hugs and Dandy Day, the reveal wheel, along with the Thought Bubble reveal wheel add-on dies. So we make one plain panel and one with the Thought Bubble puzzle piece. So just like that. And then, of course, we need a frame for that. I used the stitched one. There's the reveal wheel and the little wheel, an arrow in raspberry cardstock, and a coordinating brad, which you'll never see. I'm also going to use the Thought Bubble reveal wheel templates, the meadow backdrop portrait in Cilantro, and pieces from that in Cilantro and raspberry, and the tree stump from Meadow Backdrop Landscape and clouds from the Pivot Pop-Up. I'm shading the meadow using a blender brush and Rustic Wilderness Distress ink. I covered the front hill with a piece of paper so that I could shade behind it. So it looks like that is a little bit further away. It has some shadow to it. So sort of like a valley between the hills, and then shading the bottom as well. Now the meadow backdrop portrait and landscape come with some great little details, and these are some bushes and grasses, and I'm shading those with the same Rustic Wilderness. I'll shade them a bit more so they're a little darker, and I'm doing the same thing by hiding the front to make it look like there's some shadows in the bushes, and then coloring up the grass. And here I'm trying to keep my finger from getting ink. That really doesn't happen. Look, even with the paper, I'm still coloring up my fingers. And now I'm coming in with the fired brick distress ink and coloring up those tulips. I already inked up the stump because I was going to use it on a previous card, but didn't. And so we'll see that soon. But now I'm using clear ink to stamp out the sentiment onto the meadow backdrop, and it says, "I miss your hugs." I'll use some lawn fawn white embossing powder, sprinkle that on, and then I will melt that with my heat gun, and here we are, all the little pieces. Here's that stump, and I'm going to add those bushes to fill in the scene, and just deciding how many and where I want them placed. I look at these bushes and I think, well, they could also be clouds. So they have dual purpose here. But actually the clouds I use today are from the Pivot Pop-Up. All right, just putting some glue behind them and adding the grasses to build up the scene. And then I'll add that stump. Now the stump was made with woodgrain cardstock, the brown, the light brown, and then kraft cardstock for the top of it, and a little bit of distress ink just to give it some shadows. And that stump is going to act as the soapbox for our little mouse here. So as he's thinking, he's standing up there, and we see his thoughts in the thought bubble of the reveal wheel. Perhaps since he's in the meadow, he's the country mouse, and he's thinking of his city mouse friend. My parent-in-laws are like that. So my mother-in-law is from Chicago, and my father-in-law grew up on a dairy farm in western Wisconsin, but they've been married over 50 years. All right, well, here is some Salty Ocean Distress ink, and inking up that sky. And then I've placed the reveal wheel in my MISTI and the template on top of that, and I'm using that to add those little hugging mice, and those are from Happy Hugs. And so are the two sentiments that I'm going to put in the other two thought bubbles. So with some jet black ink, I'll ink up my stamp and stamp that down, and then move my reveal wheel and add thinking of you, and then turn it one more time and stamp I miss you. A nice thing with the template is I could have put them all in the MISTI at one time, but I didn't. So now I am putting the brad through the top of the reveal wheel template, and then through the reveal wheel and through the bottom wheel. But don't do that. I should have put the brad the other way around with the prongs facing up. And you'll see here soon why I should do that. but I just thought I'd heed the warning early. I'm putting some foam tape around that brad, but not touching the brad, and that way the reveal wheel will spin freely. So turn it around, and I have my template on the top so I can place it right where I want it. Take off my release paper, and then I'll line that back up with the thought bubble on the front and place it down on the back panel. So it's all lined up where it should be, and it's placed down on the back panel. But quickly figured out that I couldn't take off that template. So I had to rip the whole thing off the back panel, move the brad so that it was going the other way. Not a big deal. No one's ever going to see that. And so I just put the brad through with the head of the brad at the bottom and the prongs at the top, replaced some of the foam adhesive, and we're good to go again. I'm going to line up the thought bubble on the panel with the thought bubble template and place that down onto the back panel. And then that means my reveal wheel will be exactly in place. I can lift up the prongs and take off my template and put those prongs back, and the wheel is on right where it needs to be. Whew, I like a little drama in my videos, right? Well, stay tuned because more drama is to come. But first, I'm going to put some foam adhesive on the base panel so that the top panel will be at the same level as the wheel. And then I'm putting some glue on that speech bubble with my glue tube, and oops, it dropped right on the ink panel. So now I have spots on the back. So I'm going to take a water bottle and spritz some water everywhere on the panel, and then I'll lift that up with some paper towel. And I had some really big drops on there, so I'm going to ink that back up a little bit with my Salty Ocean Distress ink, and it's all fixed. Oh, wouldn't it be nice if that were the true extent of life's follies? Well, getting some glue back on that thought bubble, and then I will carefully place it around the opening. Now I can take the release paper off the bottom panel and set the top panel down onto that. Now I can check to see if it spins freely, and yes, I see all of the different images and sentiments in there. So I could have kept this frame on top, the entire meadow backdrop, and lifted that up with some foam tape around the edges and just cut out a little bit where the tab opening is to move the wheel. However, I decided only to use the bottom part because I want to throw in some extra color around the top. So now to get our country mouse all ready, I'm using some jet black ink and stamping him up. And then I'm going to cut him out with the coordinating die and color him in cool grays and in warm grays as well. So I'm starting with finding my shadows and giving him a little depth by his eye. And then I'm really kind of changing between W's and C's. I'm not too careful about which way he's going to go, whether he becomes more gray, warm gray, or more cool gray. But just blending that in and giving him a little variation with having warm and cool grays. So are you a country mouse or a city mouse? I would have to say I'm a city mouse. Sometimes I've lived in small towns and sometimes cities, but not the country. Now, my dad is from Southern Illinois. I mean, he didn't even have electricity when he was little, but my mom's from the North Woods of Wisconsin, so they were both kind of country mice. I mean, Mom's one-room schoolhouse even had an outhouse, so, but that was just grade school. Well, as you can see, I'm adding in the shadows and just blending that back into the body of the little mouse. And then I want to give him a little pink in his ears and nose, so I'm using an RV55 and blending that in with the C1. I'll put a little bit of pink in his belly with an RV52 and blend that in with the C0. And I'm going to darken up these shadows a bit. So this is a C6, just to get in the very darkest areas there of his ear and the crook of his neck and under his arms. And then blend that out just slightly with that C1, because I don't want to lose those deep shadows. But then it's time to color up his thought of him hugging his little friend. And yes, I should have colored this before I put it in the reveal wheel, but no problem. It will color just fine in here. So this card has had a few saves along the way. Let's see, there was the Brad debacle, the glue catastrophe, and now the timing of the coloring mistake. But I'm a firm believer that all cards can be saved or salvaged in some way. But anyhow, you can see my little country mouse over there on the left, and he's looking more like cool gray. So I decided to just abandon the warm grays for these guys and focus on the cool ones. And you can see where I'm putting in those shadows, and now I'm blending that into their bodies with a C1 and then with a C0. I'm going to add that same RV55 for the noses and the ear and blend that in with the C1 just to tone that down a bit. And then add in a little bit more pink, blend that in, and no problem. All right, now we can start putting this card together. Well, that tulip on the right is in the way of the reveal wheel, so we'll fix that a little later. But here's that color that I wanted to put into the background. And so I cut that into a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch panel to put on my card base. And I know that you don't see a whole lot of that plaid, but having all those colors back there just kind of brings it all together. I clipped off that tulip and we'll replant that though. I was thinking the upper right part of that meadow was looking a little bare, so that'll be a good fix for that area there. So now all that's left to do is adhere the panels onto the note card. We have our panel from the Perfectly Plaid Remix 6x6 paper pad, and then we have our reveal wheel and place that right in the center. And I'm going to add the little arrow from the reveal wheel die set so that the recipient knows what to do when they see this card. And now I can add the meadow backdrop, and then I can add that final tulip. Just put some glue on there and stick it behind the bushes. And last but not least, here is our little country mouse, and put some tape adhesive on him, and he's standing right there on the stump thinking about how much he misses his friend, and I'm thinking about how bare the sky looks. So here are the clouds coming in. These again are from the Pivot Pop-Up die set, and there's a large one and 2 of the smaller ones. I'll give them a little bit of shading with Copic markers, so a C1, and then I'll blend that into the cloud a bit with a C0. And with that, this card is all done. I hope you enjoyed the video today and it inspired you to make a reveal wheel for someone you've been missing. Thanks for watching and have a great day. Bye!